this morning. And we'll talk about the ramifications of the Sir Cliff Richard case, if you've any thoughts on that. He, in an interview with ITV, wants individuals accused of sex offences to have the right to anonymity unless charged. We'll talk to a lawyer about that very shortly on the programme.
This is David Burns
on BBC Radio Humberside.
Let's go to that lawyer now. Nick Freeman has been on the Burnsy show before. He's a lawyer. He's of some celebrity. He's defended celebrities in all sorts of cases. I wonder what he thinks about this. Sir Cliff Richard wants individuals accused of sex offences to have the right to anonymity unless charged. He did say to ITV, he's quoted on Twitter, I'd rather 10 guilty people get away with it than one innocent person suffer. He might get a bit of stick for that, Sir Cliff, I would think. But let's talk to Nick Freeman on the programme. Is Sir Cliff right, Nick? And thank you very much for your time this morning. That individuals accused of sex offences should have the right to anonymity unless charged.
I think he is right. It's something I've been campaigning for a long time, and it's a situation that actually used to prevail up until about 1976. And then what happened was it was abandoned for defendants, and it continues to exist, rightly so, for complainants. So complainants enjoy lifelong anonymity. Defendants don't enjoy any. And in my view, because of the unique stigma associated with sexual offences, I think the starting point is that there should be a level playing field, and both sides should have anonymity, but that's subject to the police making an application to the judge who's dealing with the case that anonymity should be lifted if it's in the public interest. So, for example, if the police intelligence suggests they're dealing with a serial offender, and that there's obviously a public interest in identifying that offender, then they should go before a judge, and the judge would then exercise his discretion and lift it, as would happen in the Cyril Smith case or Jimmy Savile's case, those sort of cases where it was blindingly obvious that we weren't dealing with one isolated incident, but many incidents.
And you would support that?
That would address the concerns that people wouldn't be encouraged to come forward, because in cases where the defendant has allegedly or has molested many people, then those people will be encouraged to come forward because he'd been named. But at the same time, and this is what's happening on a very regular basis at the moment, particularly with university students, we're having innocent lives totally ruined because this stigma never goes away. Sir Cliff will never recover from what's happened to him. And it's wrong that innocent people should have their lives, their reputations totally destroyed as a consequence of an allegation which is false. So we need to protect both sides.
Given Sir Cliff's level of celebrity, do you think that will help change the law? Would you be hopeful that the change might come?
Well, there have been calls for a long, long time, and every time we have this debate and we have a poll, the members of the public always vote that there should be anonymity. It's always the majority vote on any programme, and this has been going on for years and years, and I'm hoping that this case has enjoyed such a high profile that the government will sit up and listen, because the injustice done to Sir Cliff is truly horrendous for a whole variety of reasons. But my view is, why were we ever entitled to know that Sir Cliff was accused, albeit by one person, of sexually assaulting that particular person, I think in 1985? Why were we entitled to know? It was simply somebody saying something. He wasn't even arrested. He was never charged, never came to trial. And yet some people will always think, well, there must have been something behind that. Why should we know about that? Why not give him the same protection as the person who's made that accusation? And
some people would argue it's in the public interest.
Well, why is it in the public interest? We don't want to confuse the fact that the public are interested with that being in the public interest. It will be in the public interest if, for example, the police started their investigations and they found evidence which suggested that he was a prolific sex offender. Of course, he's not, and they've not found that. That will be in the public interest. But the fact that the public want to know about it, in the same way that the police officer held his underpants up to the camera, that doesn't mean it's in the public interest. And I think the public are confusing two issues. It's not in the public interest. It just simply means the public are interested. The public are interested in all sorts of salacious details. That doesn't entitle them legally to have any knowledge of those details.
Given what you've said, why hasn't it changed, Nick? What's the barrier to it?
Well, people believe. First of all, I don't know whether it's a vote winner or not. I think it's going to become a vote winner at some stage. There are more pressing items on the agenda, and people are obviously very concerned that they don't want to do anything to stop people coming forward. And of course, and I understand that. So what we want to do is we want to convict the people who are committing these atrocious offenders. But at the same time, we want to stop innocent people who are falsely accused having their lives destroyed. And it's a case of finding a balance. And what I'm proposing, I think, strikes that balance, because we have to remember also we have a presumption of innocence. And Sir Cliff was saying, well, we shouldn't name people until they're charged. I'm saying we shouldn't name people until they're convicted. When you're arrested or accused of an offence, you are presumed to be innocent. Even when you appear in court, you are presumed to be innocent. So why should we know at the date you're charged who you are, unless it's in the public interest?
But how far would you go with that, Nick?
When you're convicted.
But only in sexually related cases, or would you extend that?
I think we should just concentrate on the sexual cases at the moment because of the unique stigma. I don't necessarily think at this stage we should get involved in theft, burglary, robbery, etc., etc. That there are certain offences that have a terrible stigma, but sex cases do, because people who are accused of sex cases, when they're convicted and they go to prison, they inevitably have to go under the rule. That means they have to go in isolation because other prisoners in their own moral code will attack these people. So even in the prisons, it's regarded as a terrible offence. It's something that's not even accepted by other prison inmates. That is the type of unique stigma that is associated with it, and that's why we need to have a level playing field, and we need to protect people. But once they've done it, and once they're convicted of doing it, then absolutely, it's news that the public are entitled to know about, and the defendants deserve to have their name broadcast and what they've done. But prior to that, what's happening is you might get a university student and you'll read 2 pages in a newspaper about what he's alleged to have done. He'll have to retire from his course. He'll have to spend a lot of money trying to defend himself. And then maybe 18 months, 2 years down the line, he will be acquitted. His life is over. It's set back for many, many years. It's cost him a fortune emotionally, financially, in every way. Everyone knows what he's accused of doing. Everyone knows all the salacious details. We know nothing about the accuser at all. How can that be fair? And it happens every week. We read something of that type, because most of these sexual cases now involve the issue of consent. Mm-hmm. They tend to be 2 people, and the evidence is she says this, he says that. There's no corroboration, there's no medical evidence, there's no independent witnesses, because of the dating websites. That's how people communicate. That's how people meet now. So that is why I'm proposing this change. Upon conviction, unless it's in the public interest. I would also say, while we're discussing it, we have a very sympathetic and professional investigation system now that didn't used to exist in the era of Jimmy Savile. In the Jimmy Savile era, there was a general disbelief when people came forward and made complaints. The police attitude has changed massively, and you have professional police officers who deal specifically with these type of offenders, these type of complainants. They're dealt with very sympathetically. And the matters are investigated thoroughly. I would impose a time limit as a general rule of 3 years, so that people are encouraged to come forward, so that we don't allow prolific offenders such as Jimmy Savile to go on for a lifetime, and they get away with it, and that they're dealt with in the afterlife, but not in this life, and that has to be wrong. And I think if there is a time limit as a general rule, obviously not for children, not for people who have mental health issues, but as a general rule, people would feel encouraged themselves to say, right, I'm going to come forward, I'm going to do it.
But if they didn't know, if they didn't know about it, the only way they would know about it if the judge ruled it was in the public interest, yes?
Yes. Well, what happens is, if someone is arrested, on a scout leader, for example, this was quoted on, the police start to. One boy comes forward and says, "Look, this scout leader's molested me." So the police start to investigate it, and this is current. Well, he'll have a mobile phone, he'll have a computer, he'll have a laptop, and they'll very quickly, in the course of this investigation, work out, are we dealing with somebody who has done this on a wide scale, or is this an isolated incident? If the police are satisfied that this is a one-off, then In my view, they won't go to a judge. They'd have no need to. But the moment they suspect and they've got evidence to support it, and that evidence will be there, that this is somebody who has committed several offences, they go before a judge and they make the application. And the judge unquestionably will say, yes, I accept what you say. I'm going to name him. I'm going to allow you to name him. Okay. So that situation will be catered for.
Nick, as always, appreciate your time. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Lawyer Nick Freeman on the Bernsey Show this morning. What do you make of that, all the ramifications of the Cliff Richard case? Do talk to me this morning.